The first steam engine in history was invented nearly 2,000 years ago, and almost nobody talks about it. In the next minutes, you're going to understand how an ancient engineer created self-moving machines, how he built programmable mechanical systems, and why his ideas should have started the Industrial Revolution, but didn't. By the end, you'll see modern robotics differently, because hidden inside one of his inventions is a question that changes everything. If humanity had the technology, what stopped the future from happening? The answer isn't what you think, and it's waiting at the end of this story.
So let's talk about one of history's greatest inventors, who also just happens to be one of its biggest mysteries, Hero of Alexandria. He's often called the greatest experimentalist of antiquity, but when you start to peel back the layers of his story, you find something way more complex and honestly way more fascinating than just a single person.
So what did this guy actually come up with? Okay, get ready for this list. He's credited with describing the very first steam engine, a device called the aioli pile. He designed the first vending machine, and he even built what a lot of people consider the first programmable robot, a little cart that could follow a preset path all on its own. I mean, these sound like they're from the Industrial Revolution, not Roman Egypt.
So you gotta ask yourself, how did one person 2,000 years ago dream all of this up? Was Hero of Alexandria just some kind of once-in-a-millennium genius, totally out of sync with his own time?
Or what if that neat and tidy story isn't the whole picture? As we're about to see, the real story of Hero might be less about one man and more about a revolutionary way of thinking, of writing, and of inventing that echoed for centuries.
Okay, first things first, let's start with the popular image of Hero, the master inventor, this ancient wonder worker, creating devices that felt like pure magic to the people in the temples and theaters of Alexandria.
Okay, check this out. This is one of his most famous creations, automatic temple doors. Imagine you're a regular person back then, and you see this. A priest lights a fire on an altar, and these huge, heavy doors just swing open by themselves. It would look like a miracle, right? But it was all just brilliant physics. The fire heats the air, the expanding air pushes water into a hidden bucket. The weight of the bucket pulls on ropes, and voila, the door is open. And then, as the fire dies down, the whole thing reverses itself, and the doors slowly close. It's absolutely genius.
And it wasn't just big, flashy temple tricks. This is basically the world's first vending machine. A worshiper would drop a coin in the slot, and the coin's weight would tip a little lever. That lever would open a valve just long enough for a specific amount of holy water to come out. Once the coin slides off the lever, a counterweight snaps the valve shut. No electricity, no computers, just pure, elegant mechanics.
So how in the world do we know about all these incredible devices? Well, we know because Hero wasn't just a builder, he was a writer, and a really prolific one at that. He wrote everything down. So let's shift from the legend to the actual evidence, his texts. I mean, seriously, this guy was everywhere in ancient mechanics. His book, Pneumatica, is just packed with gadgets powered by air and water. Automata is a guide to building self-operating puppet theaters that could perform entire 10-minute plays. But it didn't stop there. He wrote about surveying instruments, the physics of catapults, practical math, and even how architects could lift super heavy objects. The sheer range of his work is just staggering.
And his books weren't just dry, boring blueprints. He describes these amazing, almost whimsical devices. Just listen to this one. He designed a fountain where a group of mechanical birds would sing. It was really a whistling sound made by water and siphons. But then a mechanical owl would slowly rotate to look at them, and the birds would fall silent. The owl turns away, and they start singing again. He was blending entertainment with education, using these little wonders to show off the principles of physics. Okay, but here's where the story gets really tricky. For a man who wrote so much, the man himself is practically a ghost in the historical record. Trying to pin down who Hero actually was, or even when he was alive, is incredibly hard. You know, scholars have been arguing about his dates for centuries. Some arguments put him way back in 50 BC, while others place him as late as 250 AD. That's a 400-year window. Can you imagine? Our best clue, our one solid piece of detective work, comes from his description of a lunar eclipse, which lines up perfectly with one that happened in 62 CE. So that's our most likely time frame. But you have to remember, it's still just an educated guess.
And the problem gets even bigger when you look at the actual manuscripts. To be frank, it's a mess. There's a core group of texts that we're pretty sure were all written by the same person. Then you've got this whole other chunk of his work that only survived because it was translated into Arabic. And then there's what scholars literally call the cloud. It's just this chaotic collection of fragments, later additions, and random texts that all got slapped with Hero's name over the centuries. There's no way one person wrote all of it.
All this confusion led scholars like Professor Courtney Ann Roby to a really fascinating idea. Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe it shouldn't be who was Hero. This quote captures that shift perfectly. She said, "I stopped thinking about him as that guy who invented the steam engine and started thinking about him as a sort of distributed artifact." In other words, stop thinking of Hero as a single person and start thinking of him as a method, a tradition, a way of doing things.
So if Hero is more of a tradition than a single guy, what actually defines it? What makes something Heronian? Well, the answer isn't just in what he built, but in how he wrote about it, an approach that was radically different from his peers. We can pretty much break down what we'll call the Hero method. First, accessibility. He wrote for everybody, not just for a handful of experts. He also synthesized information. He'd take everything that was known on a topic, organize it, make it clear, and then add his own cool improvements. He believed things should be both useful and awe-inspiring. And this is a big one. Unlike so many ancient scientists who loved to trash their rivals, Hero had this peaceful, constructive tone. He was there to build on what came before, not tear it down.
And maybe the cleverest part of his method was something we could call a philosopher trap. See, at the time, philosophers would sit around and debate abstract ideas, like whether or not a vacuum could possibly exist. Hero's response? He'd just go and build an airtight container to physically demonstrate a void. He gave them perceptible proof, things you could see and touch, that settled the argument right then and there. It was a brilliant way to cut through all the abstract talk.
So this unique approach, this Hero method, created a legacy that was fundamentally open. It wasn't a closed-off body of work. It was more like an open invitation for others to come and keep building.
And boy, did people accept that invitation. For centuries, his work was copied, translated, and added to. His influence just kept growing. By the 19th century, his legend was so huge that, and you gotta love this, the Liebig Meat Extract Company made him card #1 in their collectible series on the history of steam power. That really cemented his image as the father of the Industrial Revolution.
And this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. You can basically think of two kinds of genius in the ancient world. On one hand, you have someone like Archimedes. He represents a closed tradition. He was brilliant, for sure, but he was secretive. He would actually circulate fake proofs just to trap and humiliate his rivals. His work was like a fortress, designed to keep people out. But Hero? He was the complete opposite. He represented an open tradition. He wrote these clear, simple chapters that were like an invitation. His work wasn't a fortress, it was a foundation for others to build on.
And that brings us to the final big idea here. Sure, Hero of Alexandria invented the steam engine, the vending machine, all these incredible things. But what if his greatest creation wasn't any single device? What if his true masterpiece was creating a way of thinking about science that was so open, so welcoming, and so accessible that it inspired countless people after him to join in, to improve, and to never, ever stop building?
If you enjoyed discovering these inventions with me, support the channel. Leave a like and subscribe so we can continue exploring the hidden wonders of science together. Curiosity is the beginning of all invention. If something in this story puzzled you, write your questions below.